I trust that you are all wondering where you are.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The Movie Podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. Now, we have a much better week at the movies, but if you want to listen to the dumpster fire that was a movie week, tune into my previous episode. But for now, this week brings 4 brand new reviews, with 3 new in theaters and 1 now available to stream. This week on the show, witness the return of Jigsaw as the 10th chapter cuts through time in Saw 10. Dear Wall Street, here comes the incredible true story of a stock that rallied the world in dumb money. Humanity evolves. From the director of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, comes the creator. And finally, Israel 1973. One woman stood between victory and defeat in Golda. We have a fully loaded show this week, so let's jump right into it. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows, what? A roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire podcast. You need people like me.
Do you want to play a game?
The Wire.
And here we go.
Let the game begin.
A sick and desperate John Kramer travels to Mexico for a risky and experimental medical procedure in hopes of a miracle cure for his cancer, only to discover the entire operation is a scam to defraud the most vulnerable. In the 10th entry to this 19-year-long franchise is Saw 10.
I want to play a game.
All the men to cheat. You picked John Kramer?
The cancer is still spreading. I'm afraid there's nothing else we can do. There is one person who might be able to help.
Our program is a 2-pronged treatment outside Mexico City. The results have been stunning.
She saved my life.
You're in very good hands with us.
After that, what happens then?
Your whole life happens then. John Kramer.
According to these scans, the tumor was never removed.
How much time do I have?
Months, at best.
I still have a lot of work that needs to be done. Hello, everyone. It's time to play a game. You all pretended to cure me, but what I have planned for each of you is very real.
Peace came upon me. No light, no sound.
The only thing I have not provided is your anesthetic. But trust me, you will want to remain alert.
Of all the men to cheat, you picked John Kramer?
Please, don't hesitate. Place a big enough piece of your cerebral tissue into the glass enzyme tank. This will save your life.
So sleep, silent
This is not retribution. It's a reawakening. Live or die. The choice is yours.
Saw, since its 2004 release, has always released around Halloween time, and for a good amount of time, it was an October tradition for me to see in theaters. But the franchise just started becoming redundant, and the studios were holding on to this franchise with dear life and treated the audience as like it's one of its Jigsaw victims, allowing us to endure torture on its repetitive situations and gore porn. Now, after the failure of Saw 6, studios attempted to get clever, not letting this franchise die, like it should have, with Saw 3D and then 2017's Jigsaw and the more recent 2021's complete redirection of Spiral starring Chris Rock. You can just smell the desperation of studios really wanting this franchise to keep going. You know you're at a point where you don't know what the hell to do when you cast Chris Rock in a Saw movie. But now, after Chris Rock and Spiral, here we go with round 10 in Saw 10. And with 19 years in and being its 10th movie, I have to say that this is the sequel we should have had after Saw 2, 18 years ago. This, hands down, is the best sequel since the first trio of films. And leave it to Hollywood to take almost 2 decades to figure it out. Now, where Saw 10 wins is keeping the conflict simplistic, but the motivations shine and flood with moral conflict. Now, here in Saw 10, we have writers Josh Stolberg and Pete Goldfinger, who penned the original Piranha reboot films, Jigsaw and Spiral. These two writers really put the viewer in a moral dilemma of who we really should be rooting for and who we really should be feeling empathy for, and even questions the audience if you have any emotion on any of the characters or even agree with the concept of having an eye for an eye. Saw 10 does a fantastic job giving the audience just enough hints of who the Jigsaw character is outside of John Kramer, but instead of just making our clown on a tricycle a primary focus, it does something that is extremely clever, and it does something that should have happened years ago and sequels ago, which is giving us a straightforward look into who John Kramer is. And as we look into this character, we bring back Tobin Bell, who reprises his role as John Kramer / Jigsaw. Now, with this entry into the Saw franchise, we do get something a little different, and it actually piques our curiosity. We get to see who John Kramer is in a normal environment, when he doesn't have people in a horrifying torture trap. We get to see a simplistic, basic version of who Kramer is, but the film really never deep dives into his character, but instead gives us an outsider's look into how he interacts outside of the voice recorder. It's just enough to paint a picture of the character for the filmmakers to really try and sell the audiences on having an open mind. But instead of painting a complete picture of Kramer, the movie leaves a lot of food on the table for even more discovery into more movies, and the franchise goes this route. There's a lot of stuff we can deep dive into his psyche, and honestly, if they come out with more Saw movies like this, I wouldn't mind watching it, because I feel there's a lot we can actually learn from this character. And Saw 10 doesn't try and oversell the character and sell John Kramer's motivations as just or right, but rather gives us just enough curiosity of the character to keep our eyes on the screen. This is the most well-written John Kramer we have gotten out of any of the Saw films. I really did appreciate that the writers didn't try and sell or push a version of morals onto the audience by attempting to convince us that Kramer's actions are morally just. Director Kevin Gruchert, who also directed Saw 6 and Saw 3D, ensures that this movie and this character is just as important to keep our eyes on as our deadly games. Gruchert's direction, along with Tobin Bell's performance, delivers on style. When Gruchert wants our attention on Kramer, he gets it through intimate camera shots and the mysterious, humble writings of Stolberg and Goldfinger. But then when we want to get into our gory games, Gruchert amplifies these games by leaving nothing off his shots. This is Gruchert's best directed film to date, mainly due to the smart camera shots he utilizes to give us an included feeling of being in the room with these characters. Now, I have seen a lot of gore, I've seen a lot of horror, and I've seen a lot of violence in movies to not have a lot affect me, but the filmmakers know exactly how to get a reaction from the audience. And this is the first movie from the Saw franchise that I actually squirmed and actually had to peek through my fingers a little bit. Now, there is a scene, without giving anything away, that involves tubes being attached to some eye sockets. But after the scene was done, I had to rub my eyes, and I can feel the pain in my eyes from what I saw on screen. The reason I bring this scene up is because from the previous films during scenes like this, it almost feels like the filmmakers are just pulling the band-aid off to gain an instant shock gasp for the viewer. Here, the movie takes its time to assure that the viewer's eyes are on the screen. It doesn't pull the band-aid off fast, but rather pulls it off halfway, waits a few seconds, and then pulls the rest off. This is a style I really did respect in trying to really do something that has been lacking from the previous Saw films, is giving something to those that cover their eyes only to think it's over, to then uncover their eyes, and we get hit again with a shot that will make most squirm. Now, during the second half of the movie, this is a different feel and a different horror, where it's just not trap after trap. This is where the film really challenges itself to be something different. It turns itself from pure horror to pure revenge film. Now, when we get to the climax, this is where we get kind of a different tone, and I think the filmmakers think they have a smarter twist than what they really have. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't necessarily like the twist, but I thought the ending for a Saw movie was actually a kind of a feel-good ending, and I like the different potential that it opens it up for future stories. But at the same time, given what the climax was, it just proves that I could have used a little bit more building of the characters throughout the entire film. Saw 10 does give a balance between character motivation and gorefest actually quite well, and it's extremely well balanced here. And what I really did like about this installment is that it leaves a question mark to me if John Kramer will turn into a great character study after this movie, or will still be remembered as a horror figure from the previous 9. Only time will tell where the filmmakers will take this character. But after 10 movies, the Saw franchise went from Halloween gore fun tradition to this one, where it actually is memorable, adds some food for thought, and is actually still extremely entertaining. It's a fun Halloween watch. I'm giving Saw 10 3 stars. A David and Goliath tale based on the insane true story of everyday people who flipped the script on Wall Street and got rich by turning GameStop into the world's hottest company. In the new film, Dumb Money.
Holy fucking shit.
I will tell you, I've never seen anything like it.
Holy fucking shit.
Is the craziest I think I've ever seen.
Everything okay?
$11 million.
Oh, language. The baby's here. Yo, what up, everybody? I'm gonna pick a stock and talk about why I think it's interesting, and that stock is GameStop.
Retail traders have hooked into GameStop.
I think they think it's a good investment. It looks like there's one guy driving all the buying.
Who is this schmuck?
Dumb money, man.
Wall Street is betting that this company is going to fail. But if it fails, these hedge fund assholes make a shit ton of money. 70,000 people have watched this video.
Rory Kitty, I love you!
If he's in, I'm in.
If he's in, I'm in.
GameStop, those shares not stopping.
Holy fucking shit.
Holy shit.
We should probably dial in.
Holy fucking shit.
You got rich dudes pissing in their pants right now. They're coming at you.
You've been served.
Wall Street cheated.
You have to testify before Congress. The game has changed.
A lot of people feel the system is broken. That there's no hope for the little guy. Maybe now there is.
Shitballs.
Babe, how much did we make today?
$5 million.
How much did we lose today?
$1 billion.
And yesterday?
$4 million.
And yesterday?
$1 billion.
Yeah.
We're like really fucking rich.
Based on the book of the same name by Ben Mesrick, who also wrote books that got adapted to screen surrounding other incredible true stories, including The Social Network and the 2008 film 21. Dumb Money follows the incredible craze of a failing company, GameStop, and their stock that Keith Gill, played by Paul Dano, started by his online influence of recommending the stock as a stock he liked. The film also covers the rise of popularity of Wall Street bets. Around this time as well, we had the Dogecoin rise along with the AMC theater chain rise. This insane investment craze took place during the pandemic that many of us felt fear, seclusion, financial stress, and the sense of missing out on lost time with their community and our families. There is a lot one can assume or even connect the dots to what helped this craze become as big as it was. Now, to attempt to effectively cover the big why question about the GameStop stock, our adapting writers Laura Shucker-Blum and Rebecca Angelo from Orange is the New Black tell the story not only from the viewpoint of Keith Gill, but 3 other viewpoints of stories that run parallel with one another. A hardworking nurse working during the pandemic, Jenny, played by America Ferrera, 2 college students, Riri and Harmony, played by Mahala Harold and Talia Ryder, and an actual GameStop employee, Marcus, played by Anthony Ramos. Each character symbolizes a point to prove by investing into GameStop, from financial benefits to not wanting to miss out to jumping on the bandwagon of everybody else. But the common theme we see from all the characters is the fact that once they are all invested, they have a hard time letting go of the excitement, to even more importantly, letting go of the community that is rallying around this stock. By watching Dumb Money, some won't be able to relate to the GameStop story, and some can relate because they took part in some of these stock crazes or crypto crazes. Now with me, I can relate and understand the character motivations on screen, because I did take part at GameStop on a lot of these other temporary stocks. And just like these characters, I invested way too much money than I should have, but with me it ended okay. I made out pretty well. And at that time, I didn't have what Reddit users would call diamond hands. I didn't have diamond hands to hold on to this stock. Even though I had to question myself and it was tempting, but at the end of the day, I had to speak with my head and not my heart. Now here's where I really related. During my time of holding these stocks, I could totally understand the point of view of these characters, because before I sold mine, there were days I had to stop myself from selling. Thinking to myself, if I sell, what would bring me this much excitement each and every day? What will I do with my time if I'm not looking at my phone every 2 minutes, watching between Dogecoin and GameStop stock, and checking Wall Street bets every 15 minutes? That was my life during the time of these stock booms, and our characters show the exact signs of this, and the stress of even a slight decrease followed by a complete rocket to the moon. This roller coaster of emotions brought out by this stock gave the feeling of all those lacking emotions that the pandemic created for us. The seclusion from society, the excitement from life, the feeling of community. And this is just one of the shortfalls of what Dumb Money hints around but never goes all in with the messaging of this, but rather just tiptoes around it without proper conclusion to the messaging. Dumb Money sets the tone, sets the topic, and sets the characters up for delivering this proper message, but it really never gets there. But what it does do is give us a feeling that those of us that were involved, and reminds us of the exciting and emotional time of how these stocks ruled some of our lives like an addictive drug at one point. Dumb Money lacked on the emotional element from this message. So those of us that took part in this craze can actually relate and have some fun with a lot of the stuff we see, but here's where lies a real problem with Dumb Money, is the mere fact that we can tell this was almost made as a film for these who invested in these stocks, almost like a thank you movie to those that helped this GameStop craze. And this can kind of be a disconnect for those that didn't get involved to actually have an emotional stake in the movie. The movie doesn't really give a lot of substance to really make it intriguing, give us characters that we're fully bought into, or even enough to take away a moment where you can say, man, I can't believe that happened. Those that are engaged into the characters are the ones that can really fill in the dots of emotion and experience and can relate to them because they've been part of that situation. Now, to some of those viewers that might walk in to see Dumb Money who didn't take part of the stock, might have some trouble relating to the story or even caring about the story because there's nothing by the end of the credits roll that's mind-blowing. There's nothing really to root for. The film doesn't build that emotional stake. But that's not to say those walking into Dumb Money won't find anything of value to it because it is an entertaining film. And if anything you take out of it is a fantastic performances of Paul Dano, Sebastian Stan, Anthony Ramos, and America Ferrera that steals the show. We also have a strong star-studded cast of Pete Davidson being Pete Davidson, Vincent D'Onofrio, Nick Offerman, and hedge fund investor Seth Rogen. And I don't know about you, but there is something very satisfying about watching Seth Rogen panic and lose all of his money. It's almost euphoric. But in all honesty, Seth Rogen actually does a pretty good job here. But the problem we have is that his character is written all over the place. There's no consistency to his written character. Dumb Money was directed by Craig Gillespie from the Fright Night remake $1 Million Arm, I, Tonya, Cruella, and the more recent miniseries of Pam and Tommy. And I would say this is the type of story that has 3 goals. 1, tell a story to give us something of value walking out of the theater. 2, give us an emotional outcome because some people made a lot of money and others lost a lot of money. And 3, the question of why. Why was this stock so big other than just to stick it to Wall Street? Gillespie has multiple character stories to allow these goals or points to be delivered, and the ending result is just mere hints and no depth to any of the characters. All we have is just likable performances. Even though I could relate to this movie, I still wanted more. I wanted more written depth around the characters. I wanted more exploration surrounding our big investment wigs. I wanted more of the Robin Hood app story. Gillespie has a lot to cover in this film, and to an extent, I do give him some credit because the film keeps an engaging pace. It is never truly boring due to his smart direction. But at the same time, I feel like I didn't learn anything new or had any real feeling or emotional reaction to any of the likable characters we see on screen. Dumb Money is an entertaining film and has some fantastic performances, but by the end of the movie, there is a lingering feeling that something was just missing. And that is from all the leftover promises the film hints to cover, but never fulfills. Just like reading stock tips off of Reddit. but for what it's worth, it was a fun revisit of the days of watching this stock rise. I'm giving Dumb Money 2.5 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews on previous episodes for movies that are available to rent, buy, or stream now. Now available, Justice Knows No Boundaries and The Equalizer 3, which shot its way to 3 stars. The Greatest Evil in the Conjuring universe is back in The Nun 2, which made me pray for a better movie, receiving 2 stars. He's a superhero whether he likes it or not in Blue Beetle, which was a stylish, but the rest of the cast was more fun than our hero. Blue Beetle bugged me enough to only receive 2.5 stars. Our Big Fat Greek family is back, and this time on a trip to Greece, which had no point to its existence and tried to make me smile so much to the point it was pissing me off, receiving 1.5 stars. And finally, Don't Rush, Die Slow, and Slaughterhouse, which moved pretty fast to put a smile on my face with 3 stars. Make sure you check up on those reviews, and while you do, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe, and don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now, there is a podcast that I listen to that's so near and dear to my heart. Not only do I absolutely love to tune into this podcast each and every week, but I also love to drop in for a visit from time to time to have a conversation around a new movie release. And that's the Talking Smack podcast. This podcast truly has some of the best people to listen to on each and every episode. If you haven't tuned in yet, make sure you tune in and subscribe to the Talking Smack podcast. But let's hear from Josh over at Talking Smack now.
If you love talking blockbuster movies, comic books, animation, and TV shows, check out Talking Smack, hosted by me, Josh Scar, along with my rotating cast of co-hosts. We will talk superheroes, movies, animation, and comics with you every Wednesday on your favorite podcatcher.
Against the backdrop of a war between humans and robots with artificial intelligence, a former soldier finds a secret weapon, a robot in the form of a young child, in The Creator.
When the war started, they protected me. Took better care of me than humans would have.
They're not people, Maya. It's just programming.
10 years ago today, the artificial intelligence created to protect us detonated a nuclear warhead in Los Angeles. This is a fight for our very existence.
Sergeant Taylor, we are this close to winning the war. But the AI are developing a super weapon. Retrieve it, or they win.
Did you locate the weapon?
Yeah, it's just a kid.
Are you going to heaven?
No. You gotta be a good person to go to heaven.
Then we're the same. We can't go to heaven because you're not good. And I'm not a person.
Do you have any idea what the thing is?
She looks like a little girl now, but she's growing. Whoever has that kid wins the war.
Whose side you want, huh?
What do you want, sweetie?
For robots to be free.
Oh, we don't have that in the fridge. How about ice cream?
There is a hidden masterpiece buried somewhere in director Gareth Edwards, the creator. It has beauty, memorizing visuals that takes us to a new world, a hypnotic score, and throws of sudden glimpses of greatness throughout the movie. I found myself mentally nodding my head to a lot of scenes cheering on this film, asking for dialogue to take it a step further. But just as I wait for the follow-through, like watching a basketball player attempt a three-point shot right at the buzzer to win the game, the ball hits the rim and then bounces multiple times on the court in disappointment. For the entire 2-hour and 15-minute runtime, I felt writers Chris Weitz from Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and Cinderella, and the dumpster fire of the live-action remake of Pinocchio, along with Gareth Edwards, our director who also directed Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, have trouble balancing what they love and what they are passionate about versus telling a story from start to finish that is intriguing and compelling that we know this movie should have been. The constant tug-of-war between messaging and spectacle is always present during the runtime, like someone is being put in the middle of two people arguing. Half of the film wants to be a sci-fi spectacle and the other half wants to be thought-provoking, and the creator never finds a proper balance of the two. And when it tries to be thought-provoking, it starts to lead to something really, really special, but then it feels like one writer takes the other writer in to write the next steps. And then when it tries to be a sci-fi spectacle, it just feels like a copycat of scenes that we have seen before with a lack of attention to detail. Now, when I say detail, don't get me wrong, the visuals are stunning and beautiful. This attention to detail is on the mark when it comes to taking the viewer to someplace new, where it keeps our attention and it makes it engaging. But where the attention to details lack is a lot of the costume design and camera shots will remind some viewers of copied scenes from Star Wars. From the character uniforms, their helmets, to the android sounds, blaster guns, different variances of robots. Even at times we have some familiar tones, to even a familiar scene during the climax that some viewers will tilt their heads and say, "Oh, come on, that is directly from Star Wars." I think Gareth Edwards and Chris Weitz subconsciously have Star Wars on the brain from their work and research from creating Rogue One. Even to the point during the climax, I had to ask myself if that was a Tusken Raider holding a staff in the air. Now, where the film really does lose credibility on becoming a sci-fi spectacle is when the creator really just kicks us off with a self-narrative introduction and then just throws us into a world where AI already exists, then goes into what the conflict will be within the first 10-15 minutes. And this is where we get a lot of question marks and holes during the entire runtime of the story. Is this world is so complex and big, and we only get a self-narrative of what we should know. And when it comes to the exploring the people and the AI world, it's the biggest thing we lack when it comes to creating a compelling sci-fi film. We have these advanced electric vehicles, we have spaceships, hoverplanes, hoverboats, laser blasters, and even a technology that allows humans to pull the last moments of a human's life and download it to kind of a thumb drive looking device, only to place it in a robot to bring their mind back for brief moments. And this is a contradiction. And that's all cool, and that's all spacey, and that's all sci-fi, and that's all futuristic. But then we have characters going and using payphones again, and even car phones. In this new world of AI, what happened to cell phones? No character has an advanced communication device. There's no cell phones, but rather just payphones, car phones, and walkie-talkies. Is this movie really trying to sell me in the futuristic world of 2065? They can download somebody's brain to a hard drive, but they can't browse Instagram, they can't take a snap, they can't even Uber a hoverboat. Does that mean in the year 2065 there's no people posting food pics on social media or starting arguments about politics on purpose? And we've abolished the relationship arguments about what better looking person than you liked your spouse's social media post. Now that sounds like a brighter future to me, but the film never explores or explains this, but rather throws in this old technology because it looked good. And this is another problem with the film, is that it's so focused on a lot of these copycat sci-fi nostalgia feels, because when we run into this old technology when we're in a city, it feels like we're watching a remake of Blade Runner. This old technology and these old scenes are to get a nostalgic feel from the audience, not because it makes sense in the movie, because it doesn't, but they're using it for the pure cool factor because it looks good on screen compared to the backdrop of the environment in the city. It's almost like a futuristic noir feel. Now, during the runtime, of course, we get different scenic shots. We go from country to city to even mountaintop. And when we see these scenes, we get slight tonal differences. From country, we get the Star Wars feel. When we go to the city, it feels like Blade Runner. This is where the copycat vibe just is really prominent. And this is where the film proves to itself that it wasn't meant to be a sci-fi spectacle at all. especially with the hot topic of AI today. We don't need to see something we've already seen before when it comes to sci-fi movies, but rather the miss was we could have tapped into a lot of the topic the film itself brings up when it comes to AI, such as what would be more concerning, AI being self-aware or human error or abuse when it comes to programming AI, along with the human adaptation of acceptance of AI and AI's true understanding of the human evolution. Now, the creator, even with its off-balance writing and moments of an attempt to be a beautifully spruced-up sci-fi copycat, does have some extremely brilliant technical aspects to it. It's well shot, the tone is engaging, the musical score is completely on point to really act as an ally to the story. And lastly, the sound editing is Oscar-worthy. But also, we have the performances. The performances are top-notch here, including young secret weapon Alfie, played by Madeleine Yuna Voiles, who really does steal the show here, not just because she's the main conflict, but rather her performance is powerful. As a viewer, I felt I was in a crowded place with my own kids, being aware of her surroundings and watching for her safety. My heart sunk when she was emotional or hurt, and I cared about her outcome. This is a young performer that is just outstanding in this role. But the most surprising performance in the film was by Allison Janney, who has recently stepped out of her comedy elements lately to really stretch her range, more recently starring in last year's Netflix original, Lou. I am really enjoying this side of her range, and even though I think she has played some fun roles, this is a new side of her range that is extremely engaging. Now let's talk about our main character, Joshua, played by John David Washington from BlacKkKlansman, Tenet, and the god-awful Amsterdam. Washington here does a fantastic job with what he has to work with, but I don't think the written material really gives him anything to really stretch his range into something memorable. John David Washington's talent is far more superior than what the written material supports, and his character isn't properly written compared to the other characters in the story. Most of the good, memorable lines comes from his co-stars, but I will give him credit that he does try his hardest to make this work. And the main reason his character stands out is solely based on his performance. The Creator is one of those movies that I feel I would appreciate better in time. It's a technical beauty in terms of visuals, environments, music, sound, but it also is a disappointment to me to the mere fact I can see the potential with the story and the messaging. And I know if the writing steered away from trying so hard to become the next sci-fi classic and it focused more on the topic at hand, this would have potentially been the next sci-fi classic. But with the story at a constant tug-of-war with itself on what it wants to be, it left me a little empty and almost sad to think that this could have been something that we could have been talking about years from now. But for what it's worth, the movie is still engaging, is still entertaining, and pleasing to hear and to look at. And right now, when it comes to new releases, it's going to be the best thing in theaters to watch right now. Well, that is if you don't want to see the gore fest of Saw 10. So for that, it's a near miss for me. I'm giving The Creator 2.5 stars. It's so hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. This is a story about the intensely dramatic and high-stake responsibilities and decisions that Golda Meir, also known as the Iron Lady of Israel, faced during the Yom Kippur War in Golda.
Four, 3, 2, 1.
Today, the Egyptian and Syrian armies launched an offensive against Israel. Our enemies hoped to surprise the citizens of Israel on Yom Kippur.
Our troops are outnumbered 7-1.
If the Arabs reach Tel Aviv, Israel will be wiped off the map. In my day, they stood for the Prime Minister.
Secretary Kissinger is on the line.
Remember that I am first an American, second I am Secretary of State, and third I am a Jew.
You forget that in Israel we read from right to left.
The American people will pay a high price for supporting Israel.
If we have to, we will fight alone.
Our troops on the canal, they're surrounded.
You rescue these boys.
Might lead to catastrophe.
If the Americans throw us to the dogs, I will not be taken alive.
The Egyptians have fired a cruise missile at Tel Aviv.
Well, I'm not going to get under the table, but don't let me stop you. If the Egyptians defeat us with Soviet weapons, what message does that send to the free world?
The Russians are preparing 11 airborne divisions.
When I was a child in Ukraine, they would beat Jews to death in the street for fun. I am not that little girl hiding in the cellar.
Oh, by brave ascent, oh, by accident.
Do you know how many people died?
All those boys. I will carry that pain to my grave.
Oh, by his lady's command, oh, by
we will keep fighting for a guarantee of life and peace.
Shall I say is calling?
Oh, Golda, this was a shame. This was a damn shame, and almost a waste of something that could have really been truly special and compelling. But the film is all over the place when it comes to historic detail and basic explanations. This film will be a prime example of a writer that truly either doesn't have the confidence in his knowledge of the content, or he just doesn't have enough knowledge to truly write anything of compelling importance. Golda was written by Nicholas Martin from 2016's Florence Foster Jenkins. Now, we're going to start with Nicholas Martin's screenplay, which is just all over the place, where it feels like a high school student's history presentation that he prepared last minute in first period and is presenting it in sixth period. Now, the written dialogue from Martin flows through this film as it was copy and pasted from Wikipedia, but to avoid plagiarism, he took out the big words and added his elementary dialect so it sounds like something he would say or write. But then when it feels like Martin's running out of ways to stretch simplistic dialogue to make it seem important, he shouts out for the next topic. It plays out like a dialogue-driven formula of giving us the and then, and then, and then, and then. Nicholas Martin's screenplay is so segmented and straight to the point, it feels like we're just watching a PowerPoint presentation. This isn't helped by our Oscar winner short film director Guy Natif, who actually does have an engaging tone to this film, but his camera shots amplify the simplistic silliness of the dialogue. And this could have worked him impassable if Natif's up-close shots were not overutilized, but they are to the point where we start to notice during the second half of the movie that we're getting the same repetitive shots, we're getting the same dramatic up-close shots, and it amplifies this cut-and-dry script. And I totally get the first instincts to Natif to mask the dialogue utilizing the performances and give almost an artificial feeling of intensity, but it's too overdone. And Natif's directorial instincts just got out of hand, where it translates into the opposite of what he's trying to do. With a lot of these overdone shots, it actually takes away from Natif's biggest strength in the film, which is the engaging tone and his beautiful settings. But here's what I did like about Golda, or at least it made it tolerable, is the fantastic, amazing performances from the entire cast, especially Liv Schreiber, who plays Henry Kissinger, and of course the incredible Helen Mirren, who plays the Iron Lady of Israel. Now, Helen Mirren's performance here is truly Oscar-worthy, and if anything, she should get some extra bonus points for making such a trash of a screenplay tolerable, and even to a point, memorable. Mirren is not only extremely convincible as Golda, but she completely embraces the role and makes her powerful presence known, even at her character's weakest on screen. Now, besides Helen Mirren's performance, the makeup department here also deserves a huge amount of credit, including the prosthetics designer Susie Battersby and makeup artist Tom Lev Swartz and Ashra Kelly Blue. The work that they did is truly incredible, and I hope the work they put into this movie is remembered during awards time. Even though there's a movie that can be borderline crap, that doesn't mean that there's some really good achievements inside that crappy movie to really be recognized as some real big achievements. And the prosthetics and makeup visuals is going to be one of those. And this goes into the most frustrating piece of this movie, where we have all the elements here, including a great cast, incredible performances, a great music score, a fantastic tone, And yet we have nothing to support all these fundamentals of this movie in terms of writing. There is a scene that could have been a classic scene where we have Golda meet with her cabinet in her home to strategize her next move in the war. This is where we see her serve a cake to her cabinet. This would have been a fantastic scene if met with smart dialogue. We have a simplistic setting and sweet actions by Golda, and this would have been a great opportunity for taking some intelligent, interesting military strategizing to contradict the sweet setting that we have in Golda's home. But instead, it's met with forgettable chemistry and interactions with her cabinet, and it's incredibly brief. Nativ doesn't seem to know what kind of point nor movie he's trying to make, and we have countless scenes that are in this movie that are filled to the brim like this, along with the characters that are just written like cardboard. The only engaging chemistry we get from Golda is her assistant Lou, played by Camille Cotton. Along with characters that are just written like cardboard, the only engaging chemistry we get is from Golda and her assistant Lou, played by Camille Cotton. There are times where we get some great conversation between these two, and the chemistry is always there, but it's always cut short. The film leans on strategically placed relationships, but they lack any sort of depth or substance. And this is where, again, we go back to that formula of and then. The film doesn't just stop to build chemistry or build a relationship. It doesn't show the true human interaction true story. It's just a PowerPoint presentation. As I got into the third act, this was the final straw when it comes to me just giving up on these characters, is where we have the fantastic Liv Schreiber who plays Henry Kissinger. We can sense a certain relationship between him and Golda, but we don't get any real examples to this relationship other than what the dialogue just tells us. Golda says they're friends. Awesome, we'll buy it, but we get no prime examples of it. But when they actually meet and interact, it's a very cold conversation without any follow-through or substance. We can feel there is something missing with these characters throughout the entire movie, and I literally wanted to yell at the screen to tell me more. By the time we reached the climax, even though I knew how it ends, I came to realize that writer Nicholas Martin has no idea what he was writing or what point he wanted to make. And then we have Guy Nativ, who has this in common with Martin. Nativ had no idea what point Martin wanted to make and what kind of movie he was writing about. The final result is an empty historical feature that tells us very little about Golda, except boy did she smoke a lot. And that was my takeaway from this film. And I know this couldn't have been the intent of the filmmakers to tell a historic story and have the viewer walk away with something that comes across like a last-minute high school presentation from Billy Madison. I'm giving Golda 2 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Until next week, do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.